They came from the stars, glittering ships, flawless armor, and eyes full of arrogance. To them, Earth was just another primitive speck in the void, a footnote in a grand imperial conquest. They expected frightened farmers. They expected stone tools and superstition. What they found were calloused hands that once held rifles, eyes that had seen war, and a silence that warned, "You've made a terrible mistake." Captain Zex Vorthak came to dominate a world he believed was defenseless. Instead, he stepped onto the front lines of a war no invader had survived. This is the story of humanity's resistance, of the day the galaxy learned Earth was no longer prey. Superior technology meets primitive world. Captain Zex Vorthak adjusted his environmental suit as his sleek reconnaissance pod descended through Earth's atmosphere. The crystalline display before him painted a picture of what appeared to be a backwater world, filled with primitive settlements and outdated technology. His mandibles clicked in amusement as he reviewed the intelligence reports from the Kytherian Empire's long-range scouts. "Third-class civilization at best," he muttered into his comm unit, his voice carrying the characteristic hiss of his species. "Barely developed space travel, still using combustion engines for most transportation. This will be the easiest planetary assessment of my career." The Kytherian Empire had been expanding across the galaxy for over 3 centuries, absorbing worlds and civilizations that showed promise or possessed valuable resources. Earth had caught their attention not for its technological advancement, but for its abundant water, diverse ecosystems, and strategic location near several important trade routes. Captain Zex had been tasked with conducting a preliminary assessment before the main colonization fleet arrived. As his pod touched down in what his scanners identified as a rural agricultural region, Zex felt a familiar surge of superiority. The landscape before him was dotted with simple wooden structures, primitive wheeled vehicles, and vast fields worked by what appeared to be manual labor. His 3 eyes focused on a nearby farmhouse where smoke rose lazily from a chimney. "Combustion heating," he scoffed, checking his sidearm. "Probably burning organic matter. Absolutely primitive." Zex activated his hover platform and glided toward the farmhouse, his advanced scanner array mapping every detail of the surrounding area. His suit's heads-up display cataloged the local technology level: wooden construction, metal tools that appeared to be iron-based, and not a single energy weapon or shield generator in sight. The front door of the farmhouse opened as he approached, and a large human emerged. The creature was impressive by human standards, Zex supposed. Tall, broad-shouldered, with weathered skin that spoke of years working under the local star. The human wore simple clothing: denim pants, a flannel shirt, and heavy boots. Everything about the scene reinforced Zex's initial assessment of primitive simplicity. "Morning," the human said, raising a hand in what Zex's cultural database identified as a greeting gesture. "Don't get many visitors out here, especially ones floating around like that." Zex descended from his hover platform, his boots clicking on the packed earth. His translator worked flawlessly, converting the human's crude language into proper Kytherian. He activated his recording device and spoke in what he considered a benevolent tone. "I am Captain Zex Vorthak of the Kytherian Empire. By the authority granted to me by the Galactic Colonization Council, I hereby claim this world for imperial expansion. You and your kind will be relocated to designated zones while we terraform suitable areas for Kytherian habitation." The human's expression didn't change. He simply nodded slowly and called back toward the house. "Sarah, Pete, we got ourselves a situation out here." 2 more humans emerged from the farmhouse. One was a smaller female with dark hair pulled back in a practical style, wearing similar simple clothing. The other was an elderly male, bent with age, using a walking stick for support. Zex's scanners confirmed they possessed no visible weapons or technology that could pose a threat to his advanced systems. "So," the large human said, crossing his arms, "you're here to take our planet." "Correct," Zex replied, pleased that the primitive understood quickly. "The Kytherian Empire requires this world's resources. Your species will be granted sanctuary on a reservation world where you can maintain your simple lifestyle without interference." The female human stepped forward. "And if we refuse?" Zex's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. "Refuse? You have no choice in the matter. Look around you. Wooden buildings, metal tools, primitive agriculture. You're barely beyond the Stone Age. My ship's weapons could level your entire settlement in moments." The elderly human spoke for the first time, his voice creaky but carrying an odd note of amusement. "Son, you might want to reconsider that assessment." "I think not," Zex said, drawing his energy pistol. The weapon hummed to life, its blue glow reflecting off his polished armor. This sidearm alone possesses more firepower than your entire species has likely ever seen. I suggest cooperation." The large human, who had introduced himself as Marcus Rodriguez but went by Tank, rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "You know, Captain, I used to be in the military myself. Marines, actually. Did 3 tours in some pretty nasty places before I decided farming was more peaceful." "Fascinating," Zex said dryly. "A warrior turned farmer. How quaint." Sarah Chen, the female, smiled. "Air Force myself. Flew combat missions until I decided I preferred healing animals to fighting." She gestured toward a small building near the farmhouse. "That's my veterinary clinic over there." Old Pete chuckled. "And me? Well, let's just say I've been around long enough to see a few things that might surprise you, young alien." Zex was beginning to feel slightly annoyed by their casual attitude. Here he was, representing the might of a galactic empire, and these primitives were treating the situation like a social gathering. He raised his weapon. "Enough discussion. You will come with me to my ship where you'll be processed for relocation. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force." Tank looked at Sarah, then at old Pete. Some unspoken communication passed between them. "You know what, Captain? I think there's something you should see first. I have no interest in your primitive artifacts or cultural—" Tank whistled. A sharp, piercing sound that seemed to echo strangely in the air. Zex's advanced hearing detected something his mind initially refused to process. The whistle had been answered. Not by more humans, but by his own ship's emergency beacon. The high-pitched whine that indicated a critical system failure. He spun around to see his sleek reconnaissance pod, pride of Kytherian engineering, sitting exactly where he'd left it. Except now smoke was pouring from its exhaust ports, and the lights that should have indicated full power were dark. "What did you—" he began, then stopped as his scanner array detected movement in the surrounding area. His 3 eyes widened as heat signatures began appearing on his display. Dozens of them positioned strategically around the farmhouse, in the tree line, even underground. "The thing about Earth, Captain," Sarah said conversationally, "is that appearances can be deceiving." Old Pete limped forward, but now Zex noticed that the elderly human's movements seemed more calculated, more purposeful. "See, son, this here's what we call a working farm. But it's also something else." Tank pulled out what looked like a simple communication device, the kind of primitive radio Zex would expect farmers to use for coordinating work. But when Tank spoke into it, his words made Zex's blood run cold. "Homestead to all stations. We have 1 hostile contact. Kytherian species, standard Imperial equipment. Recommend we proceed with Protocol 7. The response came immediately, and it wasn't in the crude farmer's dialect Zex expected. It was crisp, professional, military. "Copy that, Homestead. All units in position. Target's ship has been neutralized. Proceeding with containment." Zex tried to activate his hover platform. Nothing happened. He checked his energy pistol. The charge indicator showed 0. His environmental suit's power levels were dropping rapidly, and his communication array was completely dead. "Electronic warfare," he whispered, finally understanding. "You used electromagnetic pulse weapons." Sarah nodded. "Among other things. The barn over there? That's not for storing hay. It's a communications relay station that can jam just about any signal you care to name. We've been tracking your ship since it entered our solar system." "Impossible," Zex hissed. "Our intelligence reports showed no advanced technology on this world." Old Pete laughed, a sound that seemed far too knowing for a simple farmer. "Son, let me tell you something about intelligence reports. They're only as good as the information you're given. And we've gotten real good at controlling what information gets out there." The sound of approaching vehicles filled the air, but they weren't the primitive combustion engines Zex had expected. The whine of electric motors, the hum of advanced power systems, and the distinctive signature of military-grade hover technology grew closer. Tank looked almost apologetic. "Sorry about the deception, Captain, but we learned a long time ago that the best defense is letting folks underestimate you. This farm? It's one of about 10,000 strategic positions scattered across Earth. Each one looks primitive from the outside, but underneath." The ground beside the farmhouse began to open, revealing a sophisticated underground facility. Advanced computer systems, weapons arrays, and technology that Zex's scanners couldn't immediately identify became visible. The simple farmers had been operating from a military installation that rivaled anything in the Kytherian Empire. Sarah pulled out a device that looked like a modified tablet. Your ship's systems have been completely compromised, by the way. We've downloaded your databases, tracked your communications with your fleet, and identified your mission parameters. The Galactic Colonization Council is going to be very disappointed when they realize their easy target was actually a trap. More humans emerged from concealed positions around the farmhouse. They moved with military precision, carried advanced weapons, and wore equipment that was clearly not primitive in any sense. Zex realized he had walked into the middle of a carefully orchestrated operation. Old Pete stepped closer, and now Zex could see that the elderly human's eyes held a sharp intelligence that had nothing to do with simple farming. "Captain Zex Vorthak, isn't it? Oh yes, we know exactly who you are. We've been monitoring Kytherian communications for quite some time. Did you really think a species that could develop faster than light travel would be foolish enough to leave their homeworld undefended?" "This is impossible," Zex repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. Everything he thought he knew about Earth was crumbling around him. Tank secured a pair of restraints around Zex's wrists, restraints that somehow interfaced with his suit's systems and left him completely helpless. "Here's what's going to happen, Captain. You're going to be our guest for a while. Long enough for us to explain some things about humanity that apparently didn't make it into your intelligence reports." As they led him toward the hidden entrance to the underground facility, Zex caught a glimpse of the true scope of human preparation. The primitive farm extended far underground, connecting to a network of tunnels and installations that stretched beyond the horizon. Advanced aircraft moved in formation overhead, their stealth systems now disabled to show him the full extent of Earth's defenses. Sarah walked beside him as they descended into the facility. "The first thing you need to understand, Captain, is that humans have been preparing for contact with hostile alien species for a very long time. We've had contingency plans in place for scenarios exactly like this one." They entered a briefing room where wall-mounted displays showed tactical information that made Zex's head spin. Star charts, fleet movements, technological assessments, and detailed profiles of multiple alien species, including his own. Old Pete took a seat at the head of a conference table and gestured for Zex to sit across from him. "Son, I want you to think real hard about something. If we knew enough about your people to set up this little welcome party, what do you think that says about how much we've been watching, waiting, and preparing?" Tank leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "See, Captain, the thing about humans is that we learn from history. We've had invaders before, our own species trying to conquer each other for thousands of years. We got real good at fighting back against superior technology by using our brains instead of just our weapons." The implications of what they were telling him began to sink in. If Earth had been monitoring galactic communications, if they had known about the Kytherian Empire's expansion plans, if they had been preparing for exactly this scenario. "Your empire made a critical error," Sarah said, pulling up a holographic display that showed the positions of Kytherian fleets throughout the galaxy. "You assumed that a world without obvious spacefaring technology was defenseless. But humans learned long ago that the best way to survive is to be underestimated by your enemies." As Zex sat in the underground facility, surrounded by technology that rivaled or exceeded anything his empire possessed, he began to understand that he had not discovered a primitive world ripe for conquest. He had walked into a carefully laid trap, and Earth was far more dangerous than anyone in the Kytherian Empire could have imagined. The humans weren't primitive farmers. They were the advance guard of a species that had been preparing for war among the stars for longer than his people had been watching them. And now, as the first Kytherian to set foot on Earth, he was about to learn exactly what humanity was capable of when threatened. When Earth's defenders strike back. Captain Zex Vorthak sat in the sterile holding cell deep beneath what he had mistaken for a simple farm. The walls around him hummed with energy fields that his suit's remaining sensors couldn't penetrate. Everything about his situation defied logic. A primitive world didn't possess technology this advanced. Yet here he was, captured by beings he had dismissed as barely evolved farmers. Through the transparent barrier that served as his cell door, Zex could see humans moving with purpose through corridors that stretched far beyond what should have been possible. The underground facility appeared to be massive, extending in all directions like the roots of some enormous tree. Advanced holographic displays showed information in languages he recognized as well as others that were completely alien to him. The door to his cell shimmered and dissolved. Sarah Chen entered, carrying a tablet and wearing an expression that mixed professional courtesy with barely concealed amusement. "Comfortable, Captain?" she asked, taking a seat across from him. I demand to speak with your commanding officer, Zex hissed. The Catherian Empire will not tolerate this treatment of an official representative. Sarah tilted her head. Actually, you're speaking to one of them, Colonel Sarah Chen, United Earth Defense Force, Special Operations Division. She tapped her tablet, and his cell's walls became transparent, revealing the true scope of the facility beyond. Zex's three eyes widened as he took in the sight. Hundreds of humans moved through a complex that seemed to stretch for miles underground. Advanced manufacturing facilities produced weapons and equipment that looked decades ahead of anything his intelligence reports had suggested. Training facilities where humans practiced combat maneuvers against holographic representations of various alien species, including his own. This is impossible, he whispered. Our long-range scans showed no industrial capacity on this scale. That's because we didn't want you to see it, Sarah replied. Every major power on Earth learned the same lesson during our world wars. The enemy can only attack what they can see, so we made sure they couldn't see the things that mattered. A new figure approached the cell. Zex recognized Tank Rodriguez, but now the large human wore a uniform that bore the insignia of a general. Behind him walked Old Pete, who moved with none of the frailty Zex had observed earlier. The elderly human now carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Captain, Tank said, I'd like you to meet General Peter Morrison, Strategic Defense Initiative. Pete here has been preparing for visitors like you since before I was born. General Morrison smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. 47 years, Captain. That's how long I've been waiting for someone like you to show up. Ever since we detected the first faster-than-light signatures at the edge of our solar system, we've known this day would come. Zex felt his confidence cracking. 47 years? But that would mean we've been watching your people and others like them for nearly 5 decades, Morrison confirmed. Learning your technologies, studying your tactics, preparing for the day when someone decided Earth looked like an easy target. Sarah activated her tablet and the air above it shimmered into a 3-dimensional display showing the local galactic region. Dozens of star systems were marked with various symbols, many of them indicating the presence of Kytherian forces. We know about your fleet movements, Captain, she said. We know about the Valdris hegemony, the Centauri Collective, and at least 6 other expanding civilizations. We've been monitoring their communications, tracking their expansion patterns, and learning everything we could about galactic politics. Tank leaned against the wall. The thing is, Captain, humans are really good at one thing, learning from our mistakes. And the biggest mistake any species can make is assuming they're the only ones capable of strategic thinking. A soft chime echoed through the facility and Morrison's expression grew more serious. Ah, perfect timing. Captain, your empire just made their first major error. The displays around Zex's cell lit up with incoming data. Long-range sensors were detecting new signatures entering Earth's solar system. The rescue fleet his people would inevitably send when his check-in was overdue. 3 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought, Sarah observed, reading the data streams. Admiral Keth Varanos commanding, if our intelligence is correct. Your people don't waste time. Morrison activated his own communication device. All stations, this is command. Operation Mousetrap is now active. Repeat, Operation Mousetrap is active. Across the facility, humans began moving with increased urgency. Zex watched as massive blast doors opened to reveal launch bays filled with spacecraft that shouldn't have existed. Sleek fighters that moved with impossible grace, larger vessels bristling with weapons arrays that his experienced eye recognized as being at least 2 generations ahead of Kytherian technology. Where did you get those ships? Zex demanded. We built them, Tank replied matter-of-factly. Turns out when you spend 50 years studying captured alien technology and intercepted communications, you learn a few things about engineering. Morrison moved to a central command console where dozens of humans coordinated Earth's response to the incoming Kytherian fleet. The elderly general's fingers moved across holographic controls with practiced ease. You see, Captain, the other thing humans are good at is cooperation. When we realized we weren't alone in the universe, every nation on Earth contributed to a single goal, making sure we'd be ready when visitors arrived with less than peaceful intentions. On the main display, Zex could see the Kytherian fleet approaching Earth's outer system. Admiral Varanos was following standard procedure, broadcasting demands for Zex's immediate release while positioning his ships for orbital bombardment if those demands were refused. Sarah pulled up another display showing sensor readings from throughout the solar system. What your admiral doesn't know is that we've had defensive installations on every major asteroid, moon, and orbital platform for the past 30 years. The moment his ships crossed into our space, they were already surrounded. The display showed hundreds of previously undetected human installations coming online throughout the solar system. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining operations, communication arrays, or simple research stations suddenly revealed their true nature. Earth's solar system had been turned into a fortress, and the Cytherian fleet was flying into the middle of it. Morrison opened a communication channel. Admiral Varanos, this is General Morrison of the United Earth Defense Force. You are trespassing in sovereign human space. You have 30 minutes to withdraw your forces and depart our system. The response came quickly, Admiral Varanos' voice carrying the arrogant confidence Zex recognized from his own people. General Morrison, you will release Captain Vorthak immediately and surrender your world for Imperial processing. Resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your planet. Morrison looked at Zex. Your Admiral is about to learn the same lesson you did, Captain. Sometimes the primitive-looking species is the one you should be most afraid of. The Earth General activated the solar system's hidden defenses. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as asteroids suddenly powered up, revealing energy signatures that made the Cytherian ship's weapons look primitive by comparison. Swarms of human fighters launched from concealed bases on Mars, Europa, and dozens of other locations. But the most shocking revelation came when Earth itself seemed to transform. The planet's orbital installations, previously invisible to Cytherian sensors, came online all at once. Massive defense platforms that had been hidden in Earth's shadow, weapons arrays built into the moon's surface, and a network of satellites that could coordinate the defense of the entire system. How? Zex whispered, watching as the tactical display showed the true scope of human preparation. 47 years of constant work, Morrison replied. Every scientist, engineer, and strategist on Earth working toward a single goal. We knew that when contact came, we'd only get one chance to prove we weren't an easy target. The Cytherian fleet found itself surrounded by human forces that outnumbered them 3-1. Admiral Varanos tried to maneuver for a fighting retreat, but human ships moved with coordination that spoke of decades of planning and practice. Sarah watched the tactical display with professional interest. The beauty of our strategy, Captain, is that we never wanted to conquer anyone. We just wanted to make sure no one could conquer us. So while your people were expanding across the galaxy, we were turning our entire solar system into the most heavily defended location in known space. The first engagement lasted less than 10 minutes. Human weapons technology, developed specifically to counter Cytherian shields and armor, proved devastatingly effective. Admiral Varanos' flagship took critical damage from weapons that penetrated his best defenses, while human fighters swarmed his escort vessels with tactics no Cytherian commander had ever encountered. Tank pulled up a communication display. Admiral, this is General Rodriguez of Earth Defense Command. Your shields are down, your engines are offline, and you're surrounded. I strongly suggest surrender. Morrison leaned forward. Admiral Varanos, I'm sending you a complete tactical analysis of this engagement. Study it carefully. Then I want you to go back to your empire and deliver a message. The communication channel crackled as Admiral Varanos responded, his voice no longer carrying its earlier arrogance. What message? Earth is not available for conquest, Morrison said simply. We've been preparing for contact with hostile alien civilizations for nearly 50 years. Our defensive capabilities exceed anything your intelligence services have reported, and our willingness to defend ourselves is absolute. Any attempt to invade or colonize our world will result in the complete destruction of the attacking force. Morrison paused, then continued. However, we're not interested in expanding beyond our solar system or threatening other civilizations. We simply want to be left alone. Trade negotiations can be arranged through appropriate diplomatic channels, but any military approach to Earth will be considered an act of war. Sarah turned to Zex. Captain, you're going to return to your ship with Admiral Varanos. We're giving you complete records of this engagement, along with detailed specifications of our defensive capabilities. I want you to take this information back to your empire and make sure every military commander understands exactly what they'd be facing if they decided to test our resolve. Tank approached Zex's cell as the barriers dissolved. The thing is, Captain, humans learned something important during our own history of warfare. The best way to avoid a fight is to make sure your potential enemies know exactly how much it would cost them to start one. As they escorted Zex through the facility toward the surface, he saw even more evidence of human preparation. Manufacturing centers producing advanced weapons, training facilities where human soldiers practiced against simulations of dozens of different alien species, and research laboratories developing technologies that his people hadn't even theorized. General Morrison walked beside him as they approached the exit. Captain, I want you to understand something. Everything you've seen here represents the minimum viable defense that Earth considered necessary. If your people or anyone else decided that our warning wasn't sufficient and attempted a full-scale invasion, they would discover that we have capabilities we haven't demonstrated today. They emerged onto the surface where Zex could see his reconnaissance pod, now fully repaired and waiting for his departure. Around the farmhouse, he could see other facilities becoming visible as their camouflage systems powered down. What he had taken for a rural agricultural area was actually a major military installation, connected to similar facilities across the planet. Sarah handed him a data storage device. Complete records of our engagement with your fleet, plus documentation of our defensive capabilities. Make sure your military leaders understand that Earth is not the primitive world your intelligence reports suggested. As Zex climbed into his pod, Tank called out to him. Captain, one more thing. If your people are interested in peaceful contact, we're open to discussion. We've got a lot to offer as trading partners, but if they're looking for conquest, they'd better look somewhere else. The reconnaissance pod lifted off, carrying Zex back toward Admiral Varanos' damaged fleet. As Earth fell away beneath him, he could see the true scope of human defenses becoming visible. Orbital platforms, hidden installations, and defensive networks that turned the entire solar system into an impregnable fortress. Zex activated his communication system to contact Admiral Varanos. Admiral, Captain Vorthak reporting. Mission parameters have changed significantly. Earth is not suitable for conquest operations. Explain, came the terse reply. Sir, humans have been preparing for alien contact for approximately 50 Earth years. Their defensive capabilities exceed anything in our current intelligence files. I strongly recommend immediate withdrawal and classification of Earth as a protected system. As the damaged Kytherian fleet began its retreat from human space, Zex reviewed the data Sarah had given him. The tactical analysis of the engagement, the documentation of Earth's hidden defenses, and the clear message that humanity was prepared to defend itself against any threat. The Kytherian Empire would need to reconsider everything they thought they knew about Earth. The primitive world had just demonstrated that appearances could be fatally deceiving, and that some species were far more dangerous when underestimated than when openly feared. Earth's final warning to the galaxy. 3 months after Captain Zex Vorthak's humiliating return to the Kytherian Empire, the galaxy's political landscape began to shift in ways no one had anticipated. The data he had brought back from Earth circulated through military channels, intelligence networks, and diplomatic corps across dozens of worlds. What had been dismissed as a primitive backwater was now being discussed in the highest levels of galactic government as a potential major power. On the Kytherian homeworld of Nexus Prime, Supreme Admiral Thane Koloth reviewed the reports for the 100th time. The chamber around him buzzed with the nervous energy of military officials who were trying to comprehend how their intelligence services had been so completely wrong about Earth's capabilities. Admiral Varanos, Koloth said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, explained to me how an entire fleet was defeated by a species we classified as barely spacefaring. Admiral Varanos, still bearing the scars from his encounter with human defenses, stood at attention. Sir, human military technology is at least 2 generations ahead of our current capabilities. Their defensive networks span their entire solar system, and their strategic planning demonstrates a level of coordination we've never encountered. Captain Zex stepped forward. Supreme Admiral, with respect, I believe we're dealing with something unprecedented. Humans have spent nearly 50 years preparing specifically for contact with hostile alien civilizations. They've studied our tactics, our technology, and our expansion patterns. They know more about us than we know about ourselves. Koloth's mandibles clicked in frustration. Impossible. No single species could achieve that level of preparation without extensive galactic contact. That's what makes them dangerous, sir, Zex replied. They did it in isolation. They intercepted our communications, studied our ship designs from long-range observations, and developed countermeasures for threats they'd never directly encountered. They turned their entire solar system into a fortress without anyone realizing it was happening. The Supreme Admiral reviewed the tactical displays showing Earth's revealed defenses. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroids, manufacturing facilities hidden beneath apparently primitive settlements, and coordination networks that could manage a system-wide defense with perfect precision. What are your recommendations? Koloth asked. Admiral Varanos exchanged glances with Zex before responding. Sir, I recommend we classify Earth as a Level 9 defensive civilization and establish formal diplomatic contact. Any attempt at conquest would result in casualties we cannot afford. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Morrison sat in the command center that had become the nexus of human defensive operations. Around him, displays showed intelligence data from across the galaxy as human agents, who had been operating in secret for decades, reported on the reactions of various alien civilizations to Earth's demonstration. Colonel Sarah Chen approached with a communication tablet. "General, we're receiving diplomatic inquiries from 17 different species. The Valdris hegemony wants to establish trade relations, the Centauri Collective is offering military alliance, and at least 6 other civilizations are requesting formal recognition of our territorial boundaries." Tank Rodriguez, now promoted to general himself, reviewed the strategic situation from his position at the intelligence desk. "It's working exactly as planned. Word is spreading that Earth isn't the easy target everyone thought. The other major powers are starting to recalculate their expansion strategies." Morrison nodded. "Phase 2 of the Revelation Protocol is working. Now comes the hard part, making sure they understand the full scope of what they're dealing with." Dr. Maya Patel, the communications specialist who had coordinated Earth's intelligence operations for over a decade, looked up from her monitoring station. "General, we're detecting massive fleet movements from multiple civilizations. It looks like everyone wants to get a closer look at us." Morrison activated the facility's main communication array. "All stations, this is command. Initiate Protocol Omega. It's time to show the galaxy exactly what humanity is capable of." Across Earth's solar system, installations that had remained hidden even during the Cytherian engagement began to reveal themselves. Manufacturing centers that dwarfed anything previously seen came online, their energy signatures visible to any civilization with advanced sensors. Shipyards that had been concealed in the asteroid belt began launching vessels that represented the cutting edge of human military technology. But the most significant revelation came from Earth itself. The planet's surface began to transform as camouflage systems that had hidden the true extent of human civilization for decades finally powered down. Cities that rivaled anything in the galaxy became visible, transportation networks that spanned continents revealed themselves, and the true scope of human technology was finally displayed for all to see. The reaction across the galaxy was immediate and dramatic. On Nexus Prime, Supreme Admiral Koloth watched in growing alarm as Earth's true capabilities became apparent. The planet wasn't just defended, it was the center of a civilization that had been deliberately concealing its advancement for generations. "How many humans are there?" he asked his intelligence chief. "Preliminary estimates suggest over 8 billion, sir. And based on what we're seeing now, their technological infrastructure rivals or exceeds anything in the core worlds." Zex, who had been monitoring the revelations from Earth, felt something he had never experienced before: genuine fear. "Sir, I don't think we're dealing with a single planet anymore. I think we're dealing with the most advanced civilization any of us have ever encountered." On Earth, General Morrison received reports from human agents throughout the galaxy. The revelation of Earth's true nature was causing political upheaval on dozens of worlds. Military planners were scrambling to reassess threat evaluations. Diplomatic services were requesting emergency meetings, and several aggressive civilizations were quietly canceling expansion plans that had been aimed at Earth's region of space. Sarah approached Morrison with the latest intelligence summary. "General, we're getting exactly the reaction we wanted. Every major power in the galaxy is now treating Earth as a peer civilization rather than a conquest target." Tank pulled up a galactic map showing the political implications of Earth's revelation. "The Cytherian Empire has classified us as a protected civilization and established a formal non-aggression treaty. The Valdris hegemony is offering full diplomatic recognition, and the Centauri Collective wants to discuss joint defense agreements." Morrison smiled. 50 years of careful planning, and it's all coming together exactly as we hoped." Dr. Patel looked up from her communication array. "General, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Confederation. They're requesting immediate membership discussions." The Galactic Confederation represented over 200 civilizations and served as the closest thing to a universal government that existed. Membership was typically reserved for civilizations that had been spacefaring for centuries and had demonstrated both technological advancement and political stability. Morrison accepted the transmission. The holographic figure that appeared was Ambassador Korth Valan of the Antaran Republic, one of the Confederation's founding members. "General Morrison," the ambassador said, "I am contacting you on behalf of the Galactic Confederation Council. Recent events have made it clear that Earth represents a major civilization that has been operating outside established galactic political structures." "Ambassador," Morrison replied, "Earth appreciates the Confederation's interest in formal contact." "General, I must ask directly, how long has your civilization been capable of galactic-scale operations?" Morrison considered his answer carefully. Ambassador, humans have been aware of galactic civilization for approximately 50 years. During that time, we've chosen to observe and prepare rather than announce our presence. The implications of this statement rippled across the galaxy as the transmission was recorded and distributed to Confederation members. A civilization that had spent 5 decades secretly observing galactic politics while developing advanced technology in isolation was unprecedented. Ambassador Valon leaned forward. General, the Confederation Council wishes to extend an invitation for Earth to join as a full-member civilization. Your demonstrated defensive capabilities and technological advancement qualify you for immediate recognition. Morrison exchanged glances with his staff. This was the moment they had been working toward for decades. Ambassador, Earth accepts the Confederation's invitation, with certain conditions. Name them. First, Earth's solar system remains under complete human control, with no foreign military presence permitted. Second, we reserve the right to maintain our defensive installations and military capabilities without external oversight. Third, any attempt by any Confederation member to attack or invade Earth will be considered an act of war against humanity. Ambassador Valon nodded. These terms are acceptable. The Confederation Council looks forward to establishing formal diplomatic relations with humanity. As the transmission ended, Morrison turned to his staff. Gentlemen, ladies, we've just achieved everything our predecessors dreamed of. Earth is now recognized as a major galactic power, our territorial sovereignty is guaranteed, and no one will ever again make the mistake of thinking we're an easy target. Sarah pulled up a communication from Captain Zex, who had requested permission to return to Earth as the Kytherian Empire's first official ambassador to humanity. General, Sarah said, Captain Vorthak wants to establish a formal embassy on Earth. He says his people are very interested in learning from our defensive strategies. Tank laughed. From arrogant conqueror to eager student in 3 months, that might be a record. Morrison reviewed the galactic situation displays. Across known space, civilizations were adjusting their strategies to account for humanity's emergence as a major power. Trade routes were being established, diplomatic missions were being planned, and military alliances were being reconsidered. But most importantly, the galaxy now understood that Earth was not available for conquest. The primitive world that had looked like an easy target had revealed itself to be one of the most advanced and well-defended civilizations in known space. Dr. Patel looked up from her monitoring station. General, we're receiving congratulatory messages from human agents across the galaxy. Our people have been operating on dozens of worlds for decades, and they're all reporting the same thing. No one is talking about Earth as a conquest target anymore. Morrison nodded with satisfaction. Mission accomplished. Earth is safe, humanity is recognized as a major galactic civilization, and we've done it all without firing a shot in anger or conquering a single world. Captain Zex's ship approached Earth's orbital control stations, where human traffic controllers guided him toward a diplomatic landing facility. As he descended toward the planet's surface, he could see the true scope of human civilization spread out below him. Cities that gleamed with advanced technology, transportation networks that moved millions of beings with perfect efficiency, and the unmistakable signs of a civilization that had been carefully concealing its true capabilities for generations. He activated his communication system to contact General Morrison. General, Captain Vorthak requesting permission to begin formal diplomatic procedures. Permission granted, Captain, Morrison replied. Welcome to Earth, officially this time. As Zex landed at the newly constructed interspecies diplomatic facility, he reflected on how completely his understanding of humanity had changed. 3 months ago, he had seen them as primitive farmers ripe for conquest. Now he knew them to be one of the most strategically minded civilizations the galaxy had ever produced. The primitive species had just taught the entire galaxy that the most dangerous enemy was the one you underestimated. And Earth had made it clear that humanity would never be underestimated again. Standing in the diplomatic reception area, General Morrison watched as representatives from dozens of civilizations arrived to establish formal relations with Earth. The plan that had begun 50 years ago with the first detection of alien signals had reached its conclusion. Humanity had emerged from isolation not as conquerors or supplicants, but as equals among the stars. The galaxy would never be the same, and Earth, the world that everyone had dismissed as primitive, had become the newest and perhaps most formidable member of the galactic community.